if you are going to go into business together, and I don't think that everybody should if you don't really want to, you'll make yourself.
Yeah.
But if you do, know that there is going to be a rise in conflict. And conflict doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It means what is for you.
Opportunity to grow, or an opportunity to learn a little bit more about your significant other that you didn't know before.
Yeah, conflict equals clarity. We will do this thing where before we even talk about the different tasks that we need to do, we'll say, what is your strengths? And we'll write sticky notes to remind ourselves around that person's name. So Dan, analyzer, data collector, questioner, and then there's Amanda, people, networking. And it just kind of serves as a reminder for us where our strengths lie. Because sometimes when you are working with your spouse, there's just a laundry list of things that need to be done.
Welcome back, or welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast. This is the show where we're talking about more than investing for our financial freedom. We're taking investing as a holistic approach. Why make a bunch of money and why have financial freedom if we don't have personal freedom, if we don't have that holistic health, mindset, wealth solid in our lives? So I'm so happy that you are here. And today I'm going to dive into this powerful conversation. We get to share this with Amanda and Dan Rockrohr, and they're good friends. In fact, they're from Idaho also, which is so much fun. And last year, Amanda spoke at the Conscious Investor Growth Summit. It was absolutely phenomenal. And then I was so excited about everything that they're doing. I invited them back. Yes. Somehow, we were able to get Dan to agree to join us on stage at Conscious Investor Growth Summit 2025. Because get this, Conscious Investor, their brand together is called Doing Business as a Couple. Right. I know that landed heavy for everyone, because even if you're not in direct business with your spouse, you know that even running your household is a business really in and of itself. We're always trying to learn how to navigate these things in a better way. And today we're going to dive into why are they even, having this platform of doing business as a couple? What is the importance of that? And I'm going to spoil it right now and let you know that they want to stay in love together. They want to help other people stay in love as well. They have seen the collateral damage. They've experienced the collateral damage, and they'll dive into that when couples do business together and it doesn't go well. And that's not what they want. They want to do business together, and they want to do great business and help you do that as well. We're also going to talk into what is the basis of really good business practices. And that's making sure that we're tending to our relationship first. We're also going to dive into role clarity. Yeah, don't step on my toes, And so we want to make sure, how do we decide who's doing what and why? Okay. And these are things, you could think about your house, who's cleaning the toilet, who's doing laundry, who's making dinner, who's grocery shopping. Even if you're not running a business together, this is going to really help create some clarity for you just in your everyday life with the person that you love so much. Wow. Amanda, Dan, so excited to have you here on the Conscious Investor Podcast together.
Thanks, Julie. We're so honored.
You guys have such a great platform. I always love when I'm on Instagram and I get to go see Doing Business as a Couple and everything you're creating. And I know that story, that origin story, but the conscious investor is not familiar with that story. So if you don't mind, why? What happened that, directed you so substantially to dig your heels in and say, we're doing this as a couple and we're going to stay in love together, darn it.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, let's see. My parents were business owners. I wouldn't say they were necessarily investors at that time, but I saw it take a toll on their marriage. They were in business for 37 years together, and they had certain roles within their business. And I slowly saw that kind of just weigh on them. And then ultimately ended in divorce when I was in high school. And that's kind of the backstory of my big why, because I don't want to see that happen to anybody else, or at least I'll try to help anyone else to make that so it doesn't happen. And Amanda's parents kind of went through a similar circumstance.
Yeah. So my parents had two failed businesses and actually ended up bankruptcying them both. And then we had to sell our home during the recession. And so I had a really bad taste about business and working with your spouse because I saw them fight all the time. And once they let go of the business, things got better. And so luckily for them, they're still together. But I still hold a lot of those mindsets and stories that I see from them working together. And so when Dan and I got together, that was like the first thing we talked about. We were like, we're not getting into business together. We're going to draw a line right here, right now. And then when COVID happened, we started investing in real estate together and realized, oh, we're together for a reason. We're a really good team. We actually really love working together. Let's start businesses together. And so we tried looking and buying our own business, like a brewery. We tried to buy a self-storage business. Sorry, now I'm losing my voice. and those things just didn't work out. And then I'll let you take over.
This is actually kind of cool because this is substantiating doing business together as a couple, grabbing the reins when necessary, passing the baton. And also, you've already picked up on this, I'm sure, conscious investor, but Dan is more the introvert. And so this is great. This is a great opportunity, Dan. Take the reins.
I mean, I'm definitely the introvert, but getting up on stage scares the crap out of me. So, yeah, this will be interesting. Anyone who's there is going to see my hands sweat and probably lose my train of thought. But I guess it'll be good. But yeah, we invested a lot together, and then we realized that we were operating a business together because I have a small business here at Boise, and so we knew that we needed to operate our investments like a business. So we started clarifying our roles within that. After a little bit, we kind of trial by error a little bit, and then we were stepping on each other's toes, and so then we needed to clarify our roles, and then. But then the climate changed a little bit, so we started exploring other businesses, like Amanda said, and we were really just exploring what we really wanted to do. But that kind of birthed doing business as a couple because we're like, well, okay, we don't want to do these things that we explored. What can we do? And we had already documented a bunch of things that we had done together. So we were like, well, how about we help? How about we do a bigger cause? How do we serve people better? I'd heard a lot of people talk about serving people, and I'm beginning to realize what that is. And it's really cool. Our business is very new, so I really haven't served too many people yet, but hearing the feedback from those people is empowering. And so that's what birthed it, of giving resources to people who are investing or doing business together as a couple.
Okay. I love this, and it sparks this question, is that whole concept of serving. It's something that people just throw around so much. I serve, and I like how, like, what can I do to serve you? And how can I contribute into your lives? And so I feel like it's starting to become a little bit like tinfoil, like worn tinfoil that's, just needs to be discarded. So what does that mean to you, and what was that breakthrough that you had where you're like, wait, I actually get what this serving stuff is, and it sounds like it's not the tinfoil version of it.
For me, it was more just a feeling. I didn't understand it either. And when I'd hear people say it, I just disregarded it. I was like, okay, you're serving people. What does that even mean?
Good for you, Boy Scout. Here's your badge.
What's that?
Good for you, Boy Scout. Here's your badge, right?
Yeah. I think it was more just getting the feedback from other couples saying, you have a really cool thing here, and this really helped me. And so it was more just a feeling inside that I got of going, oh, wow, I am actually genuinely helping people. Because let's be honest, my business here, I sell alcohol. It's not really helping people a whole lot. In some ways it is, but some other ways it's not. But I'm seeing that with this business where we're genuinely trying to help people in their relationship, and consequently their business will thrive as well. So that was just a feeling inside of me going like, okay, I think I understand a little more of what serving people is.
If for me, it started, so we started investing together, and then we met other couples who were investing together. So we'd go on these double dates and we'd talk and we'd have a good time. And then we'd meet another couple. And Dan and I were going on a lot of double dates together with other couples who were investing in real estate together. And we had so much in common, and we were just thriving in building this community together. And so we started a meetup, couples investing in real estate together, because we're like, we can't do all these double dates. So let's just put everybody in our backyard. And we had we had our first child at that time. And so this meetup started growing and more couples started showing up. And we were like, what is this thing? So we ran this meetup for 3 years, and we were throwing retreats. We started an accountability group for couples who wanted to invest in real estate together. None of this was a business. Everything started off as like people wanted help, people wanted a community. And so I started to feel this strong call that I was like, we need to create more resources and support for other couples, because we were having such a good time investing in real estate together. We were growing so much together. So we were like, other couples probably need this just as much. And so then the business piece came way later, three years later, essentially.
I absolutely love that. And that feeling of serving people. I mean, at the Growth Summit last year, I had so many people come up to me and tell me what they were getting from the event, or telling me, literally, I had so many people say, you have no idea. They had this look on their face, which I think that you guys understand from everything you've done and maybe even experienced at that Growth Summit, was this completely changed my life. Like, it's like you can just see it's a visceral response, and you're like, wow, that's so rad. I get to help somebody. Like, this is so cool. I want to do more of that. So with that, I just want to touch back, Dan, to speaking on stage for the first time and everything. Focus on that element right there. And you just get the whole like satisfaction. It's so cool.
So real quick, I'm letting some of my history dictate my feelings towards speaking on stage, but I was in 8th grade and I gave a speech in English class, and it was the worst speech. I won't go into what it was, but I'm just sweating everywhere. And it was dead silence from the audience, because I didn't realize who my audience was. And I even offended some of the audience, and then they had a bunch of feedback for me. So that experience has literally shaped the rest of my life, basically.
Isn't that wild? Your 8-year-old self is in your mind as your 8th grade self is dictating the decisions that you're making as a 40-year-old, which is wild to me, because that's kind of what I talked about last year at the Growth Summit, was mindset. And when he was saying, because when I was like, Julie wants us both to speak, and he's like, I don't want to. And I'm like, is it because your 8th grade speech? I literally called him out on it. He's like, I never thought about it that way. And I was like, it's your 8th grade self talking to you right now, trying to scare you from an opportunity of growth. And so we're pumped. I'm pumped.
I think what's interesting about this is that this actually has tentacles in other elements, right? Of our past dictating our future. When you think of doing business as a couple, it is a direct correlation to your past experience, as teenagers, and what happened in your homes coming out in reality, in your real life. It's a very productive use of that. But, we can use that pain and our experiences. We get to assign the meaning and the value and how we get to go forward with that.
Exactly.
Most of our resources or topics that we try to cover when helping other couples deals with the relationship, but a lot of it can be sourced back to who you are and understanding who you are, your personality type, and understanding my way of going about things, so that I can better my relationship. Because in the end, I can't really control what Amanda does, how she reacts. Only thing I can control is myself. So I need to understand myself to better the relationship.
So how do you go about doing that? I will have conversations with coaching clients, for instance, and they will say they're improving themselves. Maybe their partner is not. And so they have a frustration with that, like, I want to do this together, but they can't, and they accept that, but there is that tension. So what are some of the things that you guys do individually, and what do you do? Do you do anything together that helps grow yourselves?
I feel like we started off long distance. And one of Dan's biggest values is independence. And so I think he's always been more of like, I want to do it myself type of guy. And so the distance really helped us form our own identities. And so we actually, when we were long distance dating, we did a book club together. And we would read books from relationship stuff to more just self-help books. And then we would talk about it. And I think that has translated into our relationship even now. So that we'll read similar business books and we'll talk about them. We do a lot of I guess it's self-development, but really it's couple development, where we'll read a book or we'll watch a video and we'll talk about it. And it kind of sounds very businessy, but for us, it really works because it's really just about working on yourself.
But also too, like if you're not into reading books, I think you can use social media as a bad thing, or you can use it as a good thing. You can literally curate your own, story for yourself by engaging in certain things that you want to get better at. So just follow a bunch of pages that promote good, healthy habits, and then you can just absorb that and then talk with your significant other about it.
Yeah, we'll take personality tests. I know Dan was not a big fan of personality tests. He's like a rebel and he doesn't like to be boxed in. And so when we start, and I come from an education background, so we took them all the time. And we took our first one together, and I remember having dinner and we were talking, he read mine and I read his. And we had all these aha moments of like, oh, that makes sense why you do this. It's not because you don't like how I do things. It's just because you're wired differently. And so that started unlocking more of, it's not him trying to annoy me. It's just who he is. And I have to learn to appreciate who he is because that's who I married. That's who I fell in love with. And so pulling that into our relationship has really helped too.
I would imagine that if you're in a fairly decent relationship and you're trying to better yourself and you're practicing those good, healthy habits and showing that to your significant other, they're going to reciprocate as well. I was kind of going back to like one person in the relationship is trying to better themselves and then the frustration of the other person. I would imagine enough times they're going to reciprocate those good things.
Yeah, and it can take time. It can take some time. I'm speaking from personal experience, but
figured
you're like, that's got to come from something. There's meaning there, But yeah, but it does, and I think it's when we substantiate something, and it's not just a fad, and it's not just a new thing. And I'm reading these books, but when you are consistent and it's starting to show in your life. There's something alluring and attractive about that. And then it can become that Me Too experience of, well, I mean, I've been married to you for how long? And maybe I can do that also. And it can start to rub off in the best way possible.
For sure. For me, like I never thought about my health ever. And Dan is a big health person. And when we started dating, like I don't ever think I went to the gym. Ever, or really even took care of myself in terms of like thinking about what I was putting in my body. And Dan talked about it so much. It was almost so annoying. But now, like, I know 10 years together, I totally get it now. And it's changed me in a better way. And it wasn't him saying like, Amanda, you need to be healthier. You need to go work out. It was just him being his consistent self, showing up in his values. And ultimately, I was like, that is more helpful for me. And so you're right. It could take a couple of years.
Well, and we've gotten this question a couple of times when we first started investing in real estate. People, because I did have a property before the bar got shut down, and people will ask us like, how'd you get Amanda into wanting to invest in real estate?
Yeah.
And my answer was like, I didn't. I just kind of like she just said, like I just kept doing and kept believing in that real estate is an amazing vehicle. But, I'd kind of nudge her a little bit by sending her a podcast I felt like she would relate to. But I never said, you need to do this. And I hope that people understand that, like, if you want your significant other to do something, don't be pushy about it. Just kind of keep doing what you're doing.
That's such critical advice. And it actually really has to do with like roles and responsibilities and how do we know who's in what lane? And sometimes those lanes like that servant leader, we'll double down on two great words right there, right? But like, when we are being a leader, it doesn't always look like a director. You do this, go here, do that. a leader is leading by example and showing the path forward. So how does that look when we're looking at roles, responsibilities, and how did you guys clarify? Let me back up and say, how did you know you needed to provide some clarity there? Because I feel like there's got to be a story.
Tell that story.
Oh my gosh, there's so many stories. But essentially, when we started investing in real estate, we thought the best way to do things was just to double down. So we never really clarified roles. We were just like, if we just work harder, both of us, none of the balls would drop. We would figure it out.
Yeah.
And it caused up so many confusion. One of the stories I can think of was we had a contractor and we wanted to paint the doors in one of the rentals black, but we had not clarified who was going to be the main contact for the contractor. And so I think he repainted the door 3 times because he was getting directions from Dan and I, but he didn't know who was really the lead on it. And so he painted like white. And then I came back and I was like, it's supposed to be black. And then Dan was confused. And so he was like, no, it's supposed to be white. And like, he had to paint it back to black. And so it
wasn't it some of the trim too?
Yes, it was.
Like if you've ever rehabbed a house, there's little details that Amanda and I figured out we hate doing, but there's so many little details along the way of rehabbing a house. And so it wasn't just the doors, it was some of those other little details too.
Yeah, but we could not clarify who was taking the lead on this project because we both wanted to be involved and we both wanted to be in charge, technically, I think. And so this poor contractor was just listening to both of us. And so I think that was a moment for us where we're actually costing ourselves more money, more time. And so that's when we started saying, okay, who's going to talk to the contractor? Are you in charge with the contractor? And then this kind of led to a bigger, every single year, I was in education. So I'm always like, how can I create an activity or a format that we can follow so that we can not run into this again? And so essentially birth one of our activities that we do annually. We clarify our roles within our business and our relationship. And the relationship piece kind of came when we had our kid, because I felt like I was doing a lot of this stuff at home. And we were both working from home and doing business together and doing all this stuff now. So that kind of started pulling in the personal side.
That's so good. It's so interesting also. And so Conscious Investor, I know Amanda and Dan. It's funny because my business partners are literally like Anthony and Dan. You met Anthony. So I'm like, oh yeah, like, let me get the right like A and D set up here. So, but one of the things that's interesting is that you guys are both high achieving, highly motivated individuals. And I'm under the impression also that you both have strong leadership qualities and an aptitude to be in that leadership position. And I'm curious, how you've learned to subordinate some of those roles and say, okay, your point on that, you're president on that, and I'm VP on that. Like how did you, and specifically two highly motivated, natural leaders, how did you guys disseminate those roles?
I think sometimes it can be just as simple as asking yourself and asking your partner, what do I actually like doing? Because that's kind of what we had to do. Another funny story was we felt like when we first were in real estate that we needed to network a lot. Amanda was a super genius on this. Like she's like, well, we don't know many real estate people, so let's get around those real estate people. And that has been huge for our growth. But so we were both going to networking events. And then one day, I think I almost walked out of, I almost did walk out of a meetup because it was a bunch of people in there and I'm not an extrovert. But somebody drugged me in, called my name, and then I ended up staying. But then that forced us to talk about it. And I go, I don't really like going to meetups. I'll go to a few, but it's not my main MO. And so then Amanda goes, well, I love going to meetups. And so then we're like, oh, well, why don't we make you the primary person? So if you just ask yourself, what do I really want to do? Kind of like in our home, I hate folding laundry, but I don't mind doing dishes. Now I don't like doing dishes, but that birthed to where I do the dishes, Amanda does laundry.
We, going back to personality tests. So when we started taking those, we started learning each other's strengths and weaknesses in ways that are related to work. And so when we started doing our role clarity, we will do this thing where before we even talk about the different tasks that we need to do, we'll say, what is your strengths? And we'll like write sticky notes to remind ourselves around that person's name. So Dan, analyzer, data collector, questioner, and then there's like Amanda, like people, networking. And it just kind of serves as a reminder for us, like where our strengths lie. Because sometimes when you are working with your spouse, there's just a laundry list of things that need to be done. And so it could easily, you can fall into the trap of saying like, let's just split 50-50. And I think that's where couples kind of fall into the trap of getting burnt out because you start doing things that you don't necessarily want to do or you don't enjoy doing. And so when you start talking about more like, where does my strengths lie? What do I actually enjoy doing? Okay, now let's look at the stuff that we need to do in our personal life, in our business, or in our investing. And then let's move those things under that person. And if it doesn't fall under a specific person, you either have to accept that one of you has to take it, or you start hiring it out, you eliminate that task, or you automate it. And that's kind of the system that we use to kind of every single year to help us clarify our roles.
And that's kind of why we do it every year, because that can change easily. I'm notorious for wanting to do something for a little bit, and then after a while I get bored of it or annoyed of it and I want to pass it off. And so it's good to revisit those.
That's so good. Okay, I have like 3 questions. They're pretty rapid fire, possibly. They don't have to be. They're not intended to be. They're just great questions.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Do you ever? I know. Buckle down. Do you ever have either of you ever felt like, oh my goodness, this? I feel like I'm doing so much more than you. This feels really lopsided and unfair. Like I'm over here doing post-production to make these really extraordinary reels and write great copy. And you're over there getting to play the girls and I want to do that. Like, is there ever a time where you just get like it gets lopsided or frustrated? And if so, what do you do about it?
Yes, all of the above. I think also we have to realize that when you're doing business, like it's not necessarily equal, it's equitable. And meaning that like, we have to understand our situation, understand like where your strengths lie. And it's not necessarily in the amount of time, but also the quality of and the impact of whatever it is that you're doing. So for example, like in our business, doing business as a couple, Amanda does more of a percentage of the work than I do. But because we understand that I'm still in the bar managing some of that, and so my time is spent over there as well. But we're okay with that. And so also in our personal life, Amanda does a lot with the girls in terms of like their clothes and stuff like that. And, but mine is on other areas where it's not necessarily like each individual segment of like, it's shared 50-50 with our girls. No, I might do a little bit more of the housework to kind of compensate for some of that. I think it just all depends on what your personal preferences are within the coupleship. And I guess also like I just had a conversation with my sister because I'm in business with my sister in the bar. And she came to me and said exactly what she said. She didn't say it exactly like that, but I knew what she meant was I feel like I'm doing more of the work at the bar. So we tried to identify what it was and then put how impactful each thing was, how much time. And that helped us helped her understand that even though I might not be on site as much, the things that I'm doing take a lot of time, a lot of brain power, and they're very impactful, very important. So I think that's an exercise that people can do as well.
I feel like when you're working with your partner, you already have a lot of issues. Like you're running your household. There's a lot of things that you have to constantly be solving. Now you add this layer of business. So now you have more issues that you're constantly solving. And so you can feel like you're in this constant fight for like equal work. And so Dan and I have created the structure where we have meetings, kind of going back to a little bit, bringing the business side to our personal. We have marriage meetings. So that allows us to compartmentalize a lot of the issues that we might be feeling around. Like if I have the issue of like, I feel like I'm doing too much, gives me this moment every other week to check in with Dan and say, hey, I'm feeling like I need a little bit more support here. And so we never get too bogged down on the structure of saying like, well, you said you were going to do this. Well, we have this month, every other week check-in that we're checking on our marriage and our rules. Same thing with our business. We have weekly meetings with our business and we say, how are things going? How can I add support to you? Because most of the time, if you're running a business with your spouse, it's probably just you two.
Mm-hmm.
You're both just trying to carry the weight of everything. And so having those two different meetings structure has been really helpful for us so that when conflict does arise, because it will, because you're going to have more, it's structured in a way where you feel like you can talk about it without the emotion piece sometimes.
Oh, I love that. Conscious Investor, I'm going to give you a friendly challenge, and I'm going to encourage you to go to Instagram, go follow Doing Business as a Couple, and then in that, scroll through some of their reels and just like interact with the one reel that you think might represent Dan's comment about this conversation with his sister and equitability with what's taking place. Because as you were talking about that, Dan, like literally, I'm like, oh, I maybe that was chronicled in some fashion over on the socials, like it's really interesting. And I love these meetings. I love the concept of having regular meetings and really bringing the best of the business world into your life in general, because just because it's from the business world doesn't mean it's bad. It means, hey, there's a structure and there's a format that people have found this leads to success. And everybody wants to say success leaves clues. Well, that's a really good clue. That's a pretty easy one to implement into your life. But now you're not, what I'm also hearing, even though it wasn't stated overtly, is, hey, we have these meetings. This is not date night. This is not our personal time getting hijacked by this actual formal meeting. And am I hearing that correctly?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It seems like such a good differentiating that is so key. Curious about personality tests. What are the top, if both of you share your favorite personality platform test, whatever it is?
This one is it's kind of different. If you read The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin, sorry. That one, I think we read that book together. And so it talks about 4 different tendencies around how you react to expectations. So, for example, if we walk to a park and there's a sign, Dan will just disregard the sign. He's like, what sign are you talking about? Because he has more of a rebel and questioner tendency where he would be like, well, who wrote those rules? Why, like, are the rules helpful? And like, he'll have a lot of questions. Where if I saw that, I will see the sign right away. I will go and read it. And I will tell you like, oh, it says no dogs allowed, no alcohol. Like, I'll already memorize everything that is on there and I will follow those rules. And so that's like one of my favorite ones because it shows up a lot in the work that we do.
And I think it's just like, I used to think it's putting you in a box and it's telling you how you are, kind of like the geological signs or something, or
astrology.
That's not geology. That's the wrong word.
Hey, we can start something new, like new business idea, you guys.
Yeah. It's more like I had to understand that it's just helping me actually understand myself a little more and understanding her, why she would go do something. Like if I'm going to go cross the road and there's not a crosswalk there and she walks all the way down a half mile to go walk to the crosswalk, I understand that that's just her personality because she's a rule follower, whereas I would just cross the road. And I know that's a simple thing, but when it comes into your relationship or your business, like, for example, we try to walk our dog every day. And so she's a rule follower. We set this rule for ourselves. But I tend to think like, oh, I have something more important like work or something or play or something. I'm not going to walk the dog that day. The dog will be fine. And she'll get mad at me. And it's like, well, that's just her personality. And understanding that she's not just getting mad at me. She's like, we set that rule within our family. And so she wants to follow.
Another good one is free too. If you go to Tony Robbins, there's Strength Finders. That one's free. And that one's cool because it really focuses on the strengths of that person. A lot of times we want to like fixate on the negative. This one gives you all the strengths that person has. And so that if you do struggle to find words to say, we're really good at like collecting data and information. That's a good one. And it's free.
That is great. I'm loving these because I haven't heard of 4 tendencies. And I'm like, I got to go buy this book immediately. Next book. Dan, are there any that you have a affinity for in particular?
The 4 tendencies is definitely my favorite. I think another simple one, but also very popular, is the 5 love languages. Just because I think a lot of people will project their own love language onto other people. And so understanding what your partner's love language is can go a long ways when it comes to your business and or your relationship, just because and that can change too over time. Amanda's was touch in the beginning. Now it's act of service. So I know that if I go and do something for her, like I know she's backed up on laundry and I go do a thing of laundry, she's gonna hold that in really high regard. But what she's not gonna do is if I go buy her a present, like gifts are not her big love language. But like side note, I had an epiphany that sometimes those love languages can act like other things. Like the gift can also be an act of service, and that's for another topic, another day. But anyway.
I love that one because I think a lot of couples who are in business together will fall into the idea that because they spend so much time together working and being in a family together, that they're spending time together, quality time,
right?
Which is not necessarily true. And so learning those appreciation languages for each other and putting in those bits of love and connection outside of just working and running your household together is so important, because that's where the love kind of starts to disappear and the roommate piece starts to kind of take over. And I think that's what we're so afraid of, because that's what Dan saw with his parents, that we really try to always be lovers first than the business.
When we have pre-scheduled dates and date nights, and I realize a lot of people might not have that flexibility, but having a pre-scheduled date at a frequency that is good for you, I think is very, very important.
That's a game changer. Super Rad Steve and we have a standing Saturday morning date. Like, I'm done. The end of the day, like I just want to kick back. I'm just like, it's not my time to shine. Maybe let's go grab dinner, but it's not going to be like this, like really great time. But we love Saturday mornings. We love grabbing coffee or breakfast. And we're actually reinstating, by the time this comes out, we'll be done with it, but we're reading a book and going through that book, using it as a conversation piece. So but not having that, we realized we were starting to get some friction in our relationship. We're like, wait a second, what has shifted? Oh, you had this meeting that was starting on Saturday mornings earlier, and it just shifted things around, and we didn't protect it and like buckle it down. And so, nurturing that relationship very diligently is so critical. Oh my gosh. Amen on that.
I love that you systemize it. I know a lot of couples will be like, that's not romantic. Why would you pick the same day every day? But if you think about it, you're taking out the hard part, right? It's like scheduling, the stuff that takes a lot of energy, and you end up like then you don't have energy to plan the actual date.
Especially when you have kids, a business, a relationship, all those things can make it to where that won't be a priority.
Yeah. So when you have that standard day, it leaves all that energy to actually plan the date, to actually like connect with your person. And so you're not busy trying to get a babysitter because you already thought about all those different things, just like your business. Wow. When you have those systems in place, it's not taking away the creativity. It's giving you a structure where you can be creative in the place that you are supposed to shine. And so it just all relates.
Oh, yeah, it totally does. And I'll just give you what the future may hold for you as well, is that since we have teenagers, they know, and to us, it's a good role model. Like, they know mom and dad are out on a date Saturday morning. They get to sleep in. It's the one day of the week. It's like the sacred day for everybody. Like, you guys sleep in, do what you want. Like, like Dan, you'd love that, like, oh, there's no oversight. My mom's not going to, there isn't this other person telling me what to do. Like, it's like everybody gets this like little break, this little oasis of sorts, and it's so healthy, so great. So, I absolutely love this. Is there anything that you think, if there's a couple listening, and conscious investor, if you're listening to this and your partner doesn't listen to the show, but this is resonating, then share this with them and just say, wow, here are some great tips to share your favorite part from this, and just make sure you share this. But if someone was, reluctant to do business together, what would your top advice be?
That's a good question.
I mean, we were reluctant in the very beginning. I told Amanda I will not go into business with you.
Right. You actually,
it wasn't because of her.
That wasn't even reluctance, though. That was just like a straight up, like, we're not doing this. And then
it had nothing to do with her. It was all my past experiences and what I perceived.
One thing that Dan said before, and I really love, is like, if you are going to go into business together, and I don't think that everybody should, if you don't really want to, don't make yourself.
Yeah.
But if you do, know that there is going to be a rise in conflict, and conflict doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It means what is for you.
An opportunity to grow, or an opportunity to learn a little bit more about your significant other that you didn't know before.
Yeah. Conflict equals clarity. It helps you learn one more thing about that person, and it's going to better you, but it is going to be harder. And so you have to start to build boundaries and be ready to have harder conversations. I think that would be my biggest thing, is like, know that it's going to be hard, but what isn't hard, that's worth having. So.
Oh, that's so true. Dan, you have any suggestions for this? I don't do advice, by the way. I don't give people advice, but I do share opinions. So.
That's such a good statement. That's such a you statement. You have to steal that from Julie.
I'm good advice. I just share my opinion, whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
No, I think like the answer I was thinking of is what we kind of described right there.
I would say too, this is just more for people who are following us on Instagram. We are not perfect. I want to tell you now, like, Instagram is a highlight of all the things that we learned, and we're just repackaging it and hoping that it will help you. And so don't fall into that comparison, like the thief of joy piece. Is like, your relationship is your relationship. What we're just saying works for us, and we hope that something resonates with you to help you. So don't go coming back and say like, oh, Dan and Amanda does this and it's going to help our relationship. No, you got to talk to your partner, and you got to learn what's going to work for you guys.
Well, and you were sharing before we hit record. I love that we were talking about, did you catch a squabble on camera? And you very deliberately said, we don't do anything real time. Like, so can you elaborate maybe, and we'll hit refresh since a conscious investor wasn't there on that part of our conversation.
Well, I wonder too, if, like, I'm just thinking out loud right now, is if you've got a camera on you in that moment, you might be thinking about how you're being portrayed on video. And so not acting authentically of really how you want to. So I wonder if we had actually gotten more fights or arguments on camera, if you would have subconsciously know that the camera's watching me and I might not answer in the way that I really want to, which might be good or might be bad. So just thinking out loud.
I think some people fall in the trap of like, I have to show everything to be authentic. And it's like, transparency doesn't equal authenticity. And so you got to show up the way that you want to show up, and whatever tool you're using to learn or share your experience, like, know that that's a tool and be intentional about it. Like, we use Instagram a lot to grow our business and to get more eyeballs on what we're doing, but like, we're intentional about it. We use it as a business tool. We have guidelines and rules to help us so that we're not sucked into this social media world all the time. And so the same thing with any other tool that you may be using for your business, is like, understand that you got to be a little bit more intentional.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I heard recently it's just thinking about comfort zone, that was kind of caught my ear for a moment. And that is that a lot of times we want to, like, you hear the expression, we want to step into a comfort zone or something, or, step out of your comfort zone is how people usually say it. And I heard someone put it like this, actually, we don't want to step out of our comfort zone. We want to expand our comfort zone. So if our comfort zone is the size of Rhode Island, we don't have a very expansive zone. If we compare that to, say, my comfort zone is the size of Texas or the United States or the Atlantic Ocean, or right. And so instead of stepping outside of our comfort zone, if we can expand it, that's really powerful. So
I love that mindset.
It's so cool. This has been so much fun. I love everything that you're doing. I love the content that you're creating. It serves my life so well. I usually laugh. I'm like, I just like the content. I'm like, oh my gosh, nailed it. Like, what? Are you in my head? Like, or it's aspirational as well. Like, that's such a good reminder. That's such a good direction, such a great perspective. Your content is truly helping expand my comfort zone further on a lot of things, particularly, how am I relating to and engaging with Super Rad Steve? Because we're both highly motivated and we're both pretty darn stubborn, so it's like, how do we use these as actual super strengths and things? And so you guys just have such a great way, and I appreciate all of the content that you guys take time to create. And I know that you now have a resource that's coming out, that's available. Depending on when this is released, it might be out, it might be available. So can you tell us a little bit, Dan, you seemed really excited about that off air. So tell us about, what is this free, we all like free. What's this free resource that you guys have created?
Well, we have a couple free resources, but the bigger paid resource is a couples role clarity guide. But the free resources we've kind of already talked about. We talked about our marriage meetings. And then the other free resource, I'm forgetting the title of it right now.
It's just like, if you're going to start business with your partner, what are some things you should look out for? It's like preventing pitfalls.
Preventing pitfalls.
So the alliteration.
But I guess the role clarity guide is something Amanda and I have been working on for a really long time. And it's a compilation of us documenting a lot of our process that we did when we, after we started investing together and had some struggles. And then it's complete with some help from us. And yeah, if you want to expound upon that.
Yeah, the e-guide, the first 10 people who purchase it, we're going to do a group session. So, because we really want to help these couples. We don't want you just to buy our product and hope for the best. So we have a small group session that will kind of follow along with it. And then this is more of a teaser, because I'm a big manifester. So in 2026, we're planning a couples connection retreat that we're hoping to have out of the country, and just getting couples reconnected, because again, when you're in the grind of your business, you forget to connect with your partner. So this is going to be a little honeymoon to remind you why you got into business together. And that's going to be coming up in the future.
We're hoping Costa Rican.
Nice. Oh, I love it. Okay, that's so great. Conscious Investor. So now you know there are free resources, or you can get the couples role clarity guide. And if you're one of those early adopters, you're going to be able to enter into this really special opportunity. And then you're on to make sure that you go and follow them, if you haven't already, over on Doing Business as a Couple on Instagram, because then you're going to be able to see what transpires for 2026. And I guarantee you will want to be there. Everything that they do. So I'm going to get names right, because I literally caught myself and I was like, wait, no, Amanda, Julie, Amanda and Dan, everything they do is just, it's top shelf. It's really well done. And so you will want to be at that retreat in 2026. I'm with you. Manifest that. That's happening. It's already done. In my mind, it's already done. I'm like, it's happened. We're good. Thank you so much for coming on the show and pouring into the Conscious Investor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Conscious Investor, I had some issues with my scheduling calendar. I switched some platforms around. And so if you scheduled a time on my calendar, I need to apologize. It wasn't going onto my master calendar. And I promise you, I wasn't ditching you in some capacity. And old me, past version, would have just been beside myself, beating myself up over this, how this happened, and we could go lots of directions. I just live in a zone of acceptance. That happened. And I apologize if you were somebody that got onto my schedule and you were excited to talk to me and nothing materialized. So if that's you, or if you're someone and you want to talk about investing, or you want to talk about what coaching looks like, then please go ahead, find a time in the show notes below to schedule a time for us to talk. And it's all corrected and fixed. So I will be there. I will be fully present. Until next time, conscious investor, cheers to your health, your mindset, and your wealth.